Bow our heads for prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come before your presence today, we come surrendering it all, understanding we as humans where our capabilities are and how much we need you to just breathe, to speak, to live, to love. So, Lord, we just come to you surrendering all of our lives to you so that you, Lord, may lead us in the path that you want us to go. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. We'd like to welcome again each one of you for being here today. We had an incredible weekend last week. And we had a lot of people here, and it was such a great blessing. How many of you enjoyed the great music last week? It was a blessing. We'd like to thank Jasmine and our music team and the band and all the praise team people who just sang their heart out last Saturday. It was beautiful. It was worth it. We were able to enjoy church so much last Saturday. It was something incredible. And we just enjoy it so much, and we thank all of those who put in that special effort for it. It was really worth it, and we all enjoyed it. We want to be able to remind you of a few things that are coming up. Where the first Sunday of March, which is the 6th, we're going to be having a picnic that day. You know our picnics, great they are, and we like to give them ahead of time the day so that you do not miss it. You can plan on being there. So that'll be Sunday the 6th. We'll be having a church picnic. The Saturday before, that's on day before on the Sabbath on May 5th, we're having something very special here, and it's going to be especially for our young ladies. One of the things we're trying to do is trying to create more ministry and more help for our young ladies. A lot of times we find out that in churches there really isn't a lot for young girls. Sometimes we have youth pastors, and they're usually men who work a lot with the guys and things like that. And usually our young ladies are sometimes put aside. And this coming Saturday on the 5th is going to be a special day. So if you have young daughters, you do not want to miss that weekend. We're actually bringing Amanda back. Remember the young lady who came like 3 Saturdays ago? We're bringing her back, and she's going to preach to us on that day here, and then she's going to be having a special seminar for the young ladies in the office in the afternoon, and then she's going to be having a brunch with them Sunday morning. So if you know of young ladies that are maybe your family members or your children or whatever, make sure that they do not miss that Saturday, March 5th. Amanda is going to be coming back and dedicating that weekend for us, and we really want to be able to reach and give a good message to our young ladies. Also, we want to remind you next week we have lunch here at the church, so that way you can also get ready for that. It's been a great week. As we have been able to just finish off that last week of music and be able to carry, I'm sure that carried us for a few days during the week. And sometimes church becomes a place where we come and we load up and we get ready for the week. But sometimes all the way as we get towards the end of the week, it begins to die down a little bit. And we things begin to kick in. And we begin to feel the load of the week, the load of the problems that we have. Discouragement is probably something that has hit every single human being at one point or another. And I want to be able to touch on this subject today of discouragement. I want to let you know that discouragement is something that has not just affected you. It's affected probably every single human being that has breathed on this earth has happened to. Now, a lot of times, some people are not allowed to show they're discouraged. So therefore, they take it another way, and they act like they're not being affected and that they're always strong no matter what. But discouragement is something that affects all of us. We as parents sometimes are discouraged with our children when sometimes our children do not do everything or become everything that we wanted them to be. Sometimes we are discouraged with church when we find out that church is not everything that it should be. Sometimes you are discouraged with your pastor because sometimes your pastor might not do everything you think that a pastor should do or care for you or your pastor didn't call you when you thought that he should have called you. So all those kinds of things, we confront discouragement. We confront discouragement sometimes in our jobs when we're not given that raise that we think we worked hard for. You know what I'm talking about? You know, you worked hard for that raise, and you give it everything you have, and you're there 15 minutes early, and you leave 15 minutes late. But then, you know, somebody who just showed up gets the raise or gets the job that you thought you should have received. And all of a sudden, discouragement is something that just affects every single human being. And one of the things that happens is sometimes we think that because we're in church, because we're Christians, we're not supposed to be discouraged. We're always supposed to be upbeat. And what happens, that attitude of thinking that no matter what, hey, what's wrong with you? You know, you need to be, you know, why are you down? Come on, how could you be like that? Really doesn't do anything. What it does is just gets people to just not talk about it anymore. You know what I mean? If when you're discouraged, someone just, you know, why are you discouraged? Come on. You say, no, you know what? You're right. I'm okay. Thank you. I'm okay. And you just walk away. It doesn't mean they've done anything for you, but you just understood that your attitude or your discouragement is not acceptable. So what do people do? They just suffer it alone and don't say anything about it. In the Bible, we find that there are many who were discouraged, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about one today. And if you go to the book of Kings, 1 Kings, we find here the story of Elijah. We find in 1 Kings chapter 18, 19, and 20, we see there the story of Elijah. Now, Elijah, he was a prophet of God. And Elijah, he received the call from God, and he said, listen, my people are worshiping an idol. They're worshiping Baal. And Baal was supposed to be, they thought it was the God who was making the land grow, who's making the grass grow, who was giving them food, who was giving everything, instead of God. And they started giving this god Baal, which was brought by a queen. What happened that Ahab, who was a king of Israel, married Jezebel, who was a daughter of a priest from a false religion, from another country. And he married her, and when she came in, she brought in her god Baal, even erected a temple for Baal, and the people of Israel began to worship Baal. And so God sent Elijah and said, listen, tell them that if that it's not going to rain till I say it's going to rain. They say that Baal is the god of rain, of nature, of all of this. I'll show them who the real God is. So Elijah, when he gave the message, it stopped raining, and Ahab and Elijah had to go and hide. For 3.5 years, he hid, and there was no rain, and there was no food in the land. Finally, at the end of 3.5 years, Elijah shows up, and he comes back, and he tells the king, listen, get the people together. I want to talk to the people. So they get the people together, and they meet in Mount Carmel. And as they meet there in Mount Carmel, Elijah brings the people, and he said, for how long? For how long are you going to be in between two minds? You know, that happens to us a lot. We follow Christians, we follow Christ, and you know, up to a certain point, but then we're still with the world. And we don't completely give ourselves to God. And because they were both worshiping Baal and God. So he brings them together. He says, listen, how long are you going to be like this? So he said, I'm going to show you today who the real God is. Bring all the prophets of Baal. And there were like 800 of them. Four for one god for Baal, and then 400 for Baal and 400 for Assyria, which was another god that they worshiped. So he said, bring all 800 of them. And they came and they went to Mount Carmel, and they built an altar. And he said, listen, I want you to build 2 altars, one for you and one for me. I want you to take an ox. I want you to cut it up into pieces, and I want you to put it on there. And today we're going to see who the real God is. And here's the way it's going to be. I want you guys to pray to your God. We're going to put the pieces of an ox on there, and we're going to make a sacrifice. But just to make it a little bit difficult, we just want to tweak it a little bit. You can't turn the fire on. They must have been, what? Wait a minute. What do you mean? So no, if your God is God, he will descend fire from heaven and burn it. As I was reading the story this week and going over it again, I'm asking, what if someone told you that? Well, I want to see if your God is really God. And I want to see him send fire from heaven. Well, as they were there, these guys were looking at each other, said, okay. So they went and they made this altar. They put everything on it. And as they did that, they began to pray. And they began to dance around it. And Elijah, he was a little bit of a show-off. He had already seen what God had done in his life with feeding him and taking care of him and doing all these things. And Elijah begins back in the Bible, it says, if you read the story, he begins to laugh at them. As they're dancing around this altar, it said it was midday, and they're still dancing. And he's he's saying, it says, hey, maybe your God went for a little siesta. Maybe he's just not listening. Maybe he fell asleep. Maybe he just doesn't hear. And he begins to joke at them. And these guys, what they do, they begin to cut themselves, to see if that's what their God wanted them to do. And they begin to cut themselves and do all this thing, and nothing would happen. And of course, no fire descended from heaven. Elijah comes in and he tells the people, come in close, come in close. And Elijah takes the altar and he builds it. He builds the altar. And as he builds the altar, he took 12 stones that meant the 12 tribes of Israel. And he takes them and he builds this altar. And as he builds the altar, he tells the people to come in closer. And he says, I alone stand here. First mistake. I alone am here. He wasn't alone. The Bible story tells us that God had 700 prophets that were faithful to him. And one of the first things about discouragement is that sometimes we feel that we are the only ones doing something. Sometimes we feel that we are the only ones working at something. Sometimes we feel that we are, here in this house, I'm the only one who does something. No, you're not. You might feel you are, but you're not. And sometimes in a business, you might feel in your business, you're the only one who works. No, you're not. If you were the only one, the place would not even exist. And one of the things that he goes, listen, I am the only one that is faithful to God. And he brings them all together. And he says, listen, to make this a little bit hard, I want you to bring water. And I want you to throw water on top of the altar. And they did it once. And they did it twice. And then they did it 3 times. And there was water all over the place. Of course, we know the story that Elijah, he prays to God. God descends fire from heaven, and he destroys the whole sacrifice. Even the rocks were gone. The water, everything was gone. I mean, Elijah, he was the man. You know, he was excited. He was on not only on Mount Carmel, he was on top of the mountain. He was the man. And we come have points in our lives when everything just works together for us, and everything just comes together. And those are like high moments in our lives where we're just like, discouragement? What do you mean discouragement? I've never been discouraged in my life. You know, and we're just up there. We're just, and one of the things, let me tell you something. Those moments in life that we are just on top of the mountain is probably one of the most dangerous moments, because when people fall from there, they fall really hard. They fall really hard. And Elijah, he was up there, and he thought, he had it all together. And so he got really brave. He said, listen, all those prophets that were jumping up and down, get them all. Bring them all. And they took him over. They took him over to the brook of Kishon. And they killed them all. I mean, this is icy style, you know what I mean? And they killed them all. And he tells Ahab, listen, it's going to rain now. It's going to rain. So go home and drink, because it's going to rain. As he leaves, he begins to pray and tells his servant, tell me, is there a cloud in the sky? He said, no. And pray some more. Is there a cloud in the sky? He said, no. Prayed again 7 times. And he says, I see a little cloud. And it says, it's going to come down. And it comes down. It rained. I'm not making emphasis on a lot of these things, because I want to talk about what happened now in the life of Elijah. So it begins to rain. Everything came through that Elijah thought should happen. You know, have you ever seen that where have you ever done something and just everything just comes together? And everything just happens exactly the way you want to. And then, all of a sudden, he gets some news. Jezebel heard about it. And he said, chapter 19, verse 2. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 2 tells us, then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, he's on top of the mountain, Nothing could go wrong. Then Jezebel sent a message to Elijah saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow. She's talking about the prophets. She's telling, listen, by tomorrow this time, I'm going to cut your head off. Elijah is, whoa, wait a minute, God. I thought we had something going here. All of a sudden, this brave guy, whom everything was working for him, and all of a sudden, he sees that this queen, you're talking about a government who's going to come after you. A queen. Saying, listen, who's got an army, who's got soldiers, who's got everything, promising to you by tomorrow, this afternoon, by afternoon, I'm going to kill you. Elijah did not count on that. Elijah was thinking of from there, he was going to be, the greatest thing in Israel. Everything had come together so good for him. And it tells us that he ran for his life. He ran to Beersheba. And there he said, it says verse 19:4, but he himself, he went a day's journey into the wilderness. And all of a sudden, from being in that high, right now you're probably saying, but why couldn't he continued trusting in God. Something happened here in his mind, and something happens to us when sometimes it seems like everything is going right for us. All of a sudden, that little glitch hits our lives. A little glitch happens in the business. A little glitch happens in our marriage. Everything was going so good. Everything was according to plan. And all of a sudden, the man who was confronting everything, all of a sudden is running. Is running from this woman. I mean, couldn't God deliver him? But something happened in him. Is that same thing that you can probably understand within you, where everything is going perfect in your life, and all of a sudden a little glitch happens in your marriage, in your health, okay? In your health, in your finances, where something happens, and the person who was trusting in God and being so strong with God, all of a sudden you go downhill. And this is what's happening to Elijah here. He begins to run. And it says, but he himself went days' journey into the wilderness. Now he's running. He came and sat down under a broom tree. And after a lot of theological studies and exegesis, I found out, I studied that broom tree, and I found out that it was a tree that looked like a broom. Simple as that. And he prayed. He prayed that he might die. Do you believe that? He prayed that he might die after being so victorious. In fact, Jesus told his disciples after the Garden of Gethsemane, after the supper, and he went to the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus told his disciples, pray for me because I feel like I'm going to die. That's how he felt. That's how depressed he felt. I feel like I'm going to die. If you at one point in your life have felt so much pain that you feel like there's no reason to continue living, you're not alone. You're not alone. It is something that has been felt by our biggest heroes in the Bible who have gone through situations like that. And he says, I feel like I'm just not going to make it. And he wanted to die because things were just not working out the way he said. He said, Lord, take my life. The Bible tells us that angels came and fed him and took care of him. Then he said, arise and eat because the journey is too great for you. And he took off and he walked for 40 days and 40 nights. He walked. And he finally went into this cave. He finally walked into this cave. And God came to him. And God said, what are you doing here? Chapter 19, verse 9. 1 Kings 19:9, God asked a question, what are you doing here? I want you to look at the answer in verse 10. Chapter 19, verse 10. There's a text that I want you to see. Look what he does. Look what he does. Verse 10 says, so he said, I have been very zealous for the Lord. I have been very zealous for the Lord, God of hosts. For the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets. For the Lord, I alone am left, and they seek to take my life. Okay? As I was going through this, it would sound like, imagine me complaining to God. Okay? Imagine me complaining to God. Nobody's coming to church anymore. Imagine I come to Origin and there's only 3 people here. And they came to get something they forgot. Right? And I get here, right? And my spirit is just gone. Depressed. And then God looks at me and goes, why are you like this? And I'm going to turn around and say, God, I have been so faithful to you. Look at everything that I have done. But these people, they've all left. I start looking around. And a lot of times we start blaming other people. You know, and I'm the only one that is faithful. And I'm the only one that is here. It says, and look at the things that they have done. And now Jezebel, the conference, or Jezebel is after me, trying to kill me. And what happens, people, is in the middle of depression, we begin to feel that we are the only ones that are going through it, that we're all alone, and there's no one there. God took him and he said, and it was and he said, stand at the door of the cave. When he stood there, wind came. First, there was a strong wind, and God wasn't there. Then there was an earthquake, and God wasn't there. Then fire came, and God wasn't there. And then there came a small voice where God was. You see, people, sometimes we're looking for the victory, or we're looking for the voice of God in where we want it to be, or what we want it to be, and not where God wants it to be. Sometimes we create our own dreams. And we create our own desires. And we create our own wants. And when those wants and desires aren't met, see, Elijah had expectations, but they were his expectations. They were his own expectations. And when those expectations were not met, he went down to the bottom of the pit. And he was depressed. And he was discouraged. Without knowing that God had everything in mind. I want us to be able to look a little bit about discouragement and the things that he went through. I want to give you some 10 points that are reasons for discouragement. And I want you to look at these. You probably have some yourself already, but I want to look at these. One of the reasons for this discouragement, number one, is a lack. It is a lack to consider the process. If I run a race, I can't wait till the race time day comes, right? I can't wait. Well, February 10th, I'm going to run this marathon. I'm getting ready to begin the marathon. And I see myself the date of the marathon. I see myself crossing that line, and I get all excited. You're going to begin a business. You can't wait till you open the doors of your business. And as you open the doors of your business, you think about, I'm going to start this business, and I'm going to have $1 million, and I'm going to have this man. And you can see yourself driving the Bentley. I mean, you can see yourself just enjoying what this great business is going to give you. You get married, and you just can't wait for that honeymoon, and you just can't wait to that wedding, that beautiful wedding, and you see your beautiful bride walking down the aisle, and you're thinking, her and I, we're going to be so happy. Discouragement comes in when we think about the beginning and we think about the end, but there is a lack of the middle. The process is not considered. You see, you start running that race, and as you start running that race, after the 7th mile, your knees begin to hurt. And your ankles begin to hurt. And everything begins to hurt, and you begin to ask yourself, is it worth it? And all of a sudden, the finish line is not as clear anymore. And then discouragement kicks in. You know why? Because you never thought about the process. About the process that you have to go through to have a good marriage. I was talking to someone last night. I had to take my mom to emergency again. And I was there sitting in emergency, and I met a doctor who actually has come to our church, and I didn't know who she was. And but she actually came in like 2 or 3 times, and the third time she goes, I mean, are you the pastor? And I say, yeah. She goes, oh, I've been to your church. And we were talking, and we were talking, people talking about marriage, and I had to tell people, I said, listen, most people give up in marriage in the first 10 years because that's the hardest part. If you could get through that process, if you could get through those first years, you're going to enjoy marriage in such a way. My wife and I, we talk about, been married 30 years now, and now is when we're really enjoying the relationship like never before. But the problem is that it doesn't just happen. It don't just happen. You have to work at it. You have to take time for it. And most people give up in the middle of the process. And process is painful. Starting a business, your life, your marriage, anything that you're going to accomplish in life, the process is the hardest part. And that's where discouragement comes in. When people don't think about the process that it takes to be able to get to where you want to be, and usually the process is painful. I have never seen, maybe you have, I have never seen a real successful business that never went broke once or twice before it really hit it. But you see, most people don't think about that. They don't think about the process, about the learning process that it takes. Number 2, a lot of times discouragement comes in because they're not being prepared. There's a lack of preparation for the process. Not being prepared for the process. We always know, I always know, that if there's something that can go wrong, what happens? It will. And a lot of times people don't prepare for that. If you're going to get married, you're going to go through some rough times. You're going to go through some rough times. And a lot of times that's why I tell people that marriage, what keeps marriage together is not love. He said, what are you talking about? I mean, love is what keeps us together. I said, no, it's commitment. It's commitment. Because you're going to wake up days that you're not going to love the person you're sleeping next to. You're not going to love them. That you're going to go through moments that you're just not going to love that person. But you know what? The commitment is going to make you stay, and it's going to make that love come back and grow. Because love is something you can make happen. People say, well, love is just a feeling you have. No, it isn't. I mean, that's why you only go out to lunch and take flowers and give postcards and call with loving words to your wife or your husband. You know why? Because if you start doing it to somebody else, you're going to fall in love with them, right? So, that's why you don't do that. You save all those things for one specific person because those actions create what? Love. So, some people sometimes come and says, Pastor, I just don't love him anymore. Or some guy come up, Pastor, I just don't feel anything for her anymore. So what did you do at the beginning to fall in love with her? What did you do? I used to call her, and I used to, go out for lunch. Well, do the same thing again. Do it again, man. Do what you did at the beginning. And the thing is that a lot of times people aren't ready for that. They don't plan. They get married and they think that everything is going to go perfect. No, it's not going. I guarantee you it's not going to go perfect. So mentally you have to be ready for that. So sometimes discouragement comes in when we are not ready for those difficult times. We're not mentally ready for things to happen. Sometimes you can put all your eggs in one basket. You can't do that. You have to know that there's certain things can go wrong, and you have to be ready for that. When you travel, you take your passport. You say, well, I got my passport with me. When I travel, one of the things I do, I get on the plane, and I take my iPhone out, and I take a picture of my passport. What if I lose my passport? If I lose my passport, I can go anywhere and show the picture, right? It's got the number on my passport. It's got everything. Yeah, I said, well, somebody steals your phone. No, come on. But you try to do, as you go through life, whatever you do, if it's finances, your home, your marriage, you have to prepare for certain things to go wrong. You need to have a little bit of money put aside if things go wrong. You need to take care, and discouragement comes in when you only think of the brightness, you only think of the good things, and you never think that something can go wrong. No, usually something will go wrong. Think about what about the what ifs? I know that there are guys out there that when I look at my wife, I take care of my wife, and I want to show her love, and I want to let her know that she's got something special with me. I need to let her know all that. You know why? Because I know there's somebody out there that looks better than me. I know it. And I know somebody that's going to be out there is going to be really charming to her. I know that. So I gotta prepare things. I gotta set it up, so that when that dude shows up, she's like, no, I'm already being taken care of. You can't live with that assurance like, hey, I got it, it's all mine, ain't nobody out there better than me. No, what if? What if? Okay? So, and everything that you do, people who become discouraged in life are people who never think about that what if. They think they got everything packed. They got everything done, done right. That's not the way it is. Also, number 3, another reason for discouragement is people are living in the exception instead of the rule. A young lady comes to me. It's happened a million times. Pastor, yes, I'm 25 years old, and I'm going to marry a guy who's 58 years old. Ooh. I'm like, that doesn't usually work. I know, Pastor, but I know this one couple living in the exception, I know there's one couple, the one out of 100. They're happy. I'm thinking, is he a millionaire? Yeah, oh, okay. So, I know this, and there's a lot of people who live in the exception. People, if there's 10 things and 9 out of those 10 people did things in a specific way and it worked, and one didn't work, why do you want to go with the one? There are people that are always living in the exception. Well, yeah, nobody's ever done that before, but I'm going to do it. People who are constantly thinking that way are people who set themselves up for discouragement. Don't live in the exception. There are certain people that are always trying to be the hero, trying to do what nobody else does. What about doing something that most people are successful at? What about doing that? Have you ever, if you ever worked in a place and you have this one employee that comes in and he's always trying to show you how he knows more, how he knows better, and how he's going to show you how he does it differently, those people usually don't last in a job too long. Because the boss is sitting there saying, listen, I've been here doing it 30 years. I've done it every which way. This is the way it works. But the thing is, a lot of times people take life that way. They want to be what nobody else does. They want to create a relationship. They fall into the most difficult relationships trying to make that work. And they'll do things that are just, that they're destined for failure. Instead of sticking to the rule. Stick with what works. And don't be living in the exception, because if you live in the exception, you're going to find yourself getting ready for failure. Also, discouragement comes together with fear when fear takes over. Fear is okay. There's nothing wrong with fear. Fear is okay as long as you don't let it take control of you. Because when fear takes control, you just can't move forward. When fear takes over, now fear becomes a reason that, the reason of why you do things. So, when fear takes over, fear now becomes the reason of why you do things. Fear will deviate you from what you were originally wanted to do. Now you begin to do things because you are afraid. You're going to go down the street because you need to go because you need to go to that store. And as you're walking down the store, all of a sudden you see the wrong people standing in the corners. Now you begin to act crazy. Now you begin to walk 3 miles around. Now you begin to now everything you do is because of fear, and you forget about the whole purpose that you were going to that store. Fear gets you to respect things and know what to do and what not to do, and not do stupid things. But fear can deviate you from your original plan. In fact, God asked Elijah, why are you here? And he should have said, because that crazy woman wanted to kill me. But he said, no, listen, your people have disobeyed. I am the only one faithful. And all of a sudden, the whole reason of what God was doing in his life, the whole purpose, everything got blurry. Everything went away because of fear. See, and another reason number 5 of why we run into discouragement is because the fear of failure. Because we fail. No one has ever been successful at anything without failing. We cannot be afraid of failure. Henry Ford went broke 5 times before he became the owner of Ford. Macy's shut down their store 7 times before it became successful. Soichiro he was the owner of Honda, offered his services to Toyota. And when he was showing him the stuff he was wanting to do, they fired him. So he went and he started making scooters out of his garage. So then he started his own company, and that's the Honda car today. Akio Morita, probably never heard of him, but he built a rice cooker. And he only built 100 models, and the rice cooker didn't cook rice, it burnt the rice. But he kept going, and he kept trying. And you don't know him, Akio Morita, but you do know Sony, right? That's the owner of Sony. Walt Disney was fired because of a lack of imagination. Right? He was fired because of a lack of imagination, and he presented his business plan about 100 times to about 100 different banks. And none of them took a risk with him till finally one did. You see, people, failing is something that teaches you how not to do something. It teaches you of how not to do something. It's not something that should tear you down and slow you down and discourage you. It teaches you that there's something that you need to do. There's something you need to do different. You can't continue doing the same thing. And you head the problem into a whole other way. People who are constantly discouraged, number 6, are people that are always looking at the problem instead of the solution. You're going to hear that from me a lot. In church here, sometimes we run into issues. And we're going to do a program, we do whatever. And people come to me, and all of a sudden they start telling me everything that's wrong. I say, listen, it's too late for that. I don't want to hear about what's wrong. I want to hear about what we can do. Find a solution. And people that are constantly discouraged about everything are people that are focused on problems. And every time you talk to them, they're talking to you about a problem, but never about solutions. And their conversation is always surrounded about headaches and problems and difficulties and all this. Is that the type of people you like to be around? Nah. You know, because there comes a point you just don't want to hear it anymore. And people that are constantly discouraged are people that are always talking about problems. They're focused on problems, and they're not focused on solutions. And there's usually a lot of solutions to the problems, but when you get so lost into the problem, you just don't see them. You just don't see them. It's like when you're running a company or you're working, right? If you are working somewhere, you're in an office, right? And the fax machine breaks. And you're working at the office. The owner comes in and he tells you, did you send the fax? Okay? Now listen to these people. This is important. Did you send the fax? One type of person will say, fax machine broke. Couldn't send the fax. Owner says, okay, all right. But then there's another type of worker that when the fax machine breaks, fixes the darn machine. Doesn't sit there and say, well, the fax machine broke. We'll find a way, we'll turn that machine over, do whatever they need to do, call AT&T, call whoever, when the world is wrong, and by the time the guy is back, that machine is fixed and it's going again. That's the type of person who sees the solution and works for the solution instead of the problem. And that's when the boss comes in and says, you need a raise. But the person who says the machine is broke, that's it. You know, this kind of person is the kind of person who's going to be discouraged all the time because everything in life, problems are in abundance, people. Problems are in abundance. And if you begin to think about problems, you're going to go crazy. You're going to be discouraged. You are going to be in so many, you're going to be depressed. Depression is a sickness. Because you get stuck on the problems instead of the solutions. Number 7, not having your why clear in life will take you to depression. Not having your why clear. I want you to see this video. I found this video this week. And it's just an awesome video that tells us about how important having a why in your life, of why you do things, why you do what you do. And unless you have that why, you're going to run into so many difficulties and you won't be able to get over it because you need to have that why. Listen to this.
But the key really isn't to know what. The key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just going to show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it.
You see that?
When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
See, people, a lot of times discouragement kicks in because we don't even know why we're living. We're in a job and we don't even know why we're there. We're in a marriage and we don't even know why we're there. We do a career and we don't even know why we do the career. There's no why there. There's no reason that gets you up in the morning and excited about. Because see, that why is what helps you get over the problems, when the difficulties, when you fail at this, you still get up and you keep going. Because there is that why that's pushing you. That why has to be bigger than anything else in your life. And what happened to Elijah forgot about the why he was doing all this for God. And all of a sudden, he became the center. Instead of God becoming the center of everything that he was doing, all of a sudden, he became the center. And all of a sudden, oh my God, they're going to kill me. But, bro, God has taken care of you for 3.5 years, fed you, led you, taken you everywhere. And now, all of a sudden, everything changed about Elijah when he started to worry about himself. The why was gone. And all of a sudden, God was gone, and it was all about him. When you lose your why in life, of why you do what you do, why you get up in the morning and work. See, it has to be more than just paying the bills. It has to be more than that. And if it is, you got to get down and you that why, man, you want to get your kids through college. You want your kids to become everything that God wants you to be. That why has to be big in your life, and that why is what's going to kick in your behind every morning. And it's going to get you going to doing something. Because if not, believe me, there are plenty of reasons for discouragement to kick in and just tear you down. And just tear you down. You need to have that why. And you saw how differently he sang that song. And listen, sing like somebody just shot you in your back. Your uncle just got out of jail. All of a sudden, that amazing grace becomes so much more. And that why is important in your life. Because if not, believe me, there are plenty of reasons for discouragement to kick in. A lot of times also, number 8, I want to tell you, is why discouragement kicks in is because you're all alone. You're all alone. You get this feeling that you are alone. You get the feeling that nobody is going through what you're going through. That's not true. Everybody goes through probably the same problem you're going through, in the same exact one a million times. I remember this woman called me one time, and she knew me. We grew up together, and she said, listen, my husband just left me. I got 2 kids to feed, and he just left me for another woman. And I don't know what to do. And, she cried with me on the phone for about an hour, and I just listened and listened to her. Because when people are depressed and when people are discouraged, it's real stuff. So you got to listen to them, and you got to value what they're going through. Okay? After a while, I said, okay, I understand you, that you are in this pain, and I want to let you know something. You have a great excuse to fail the rest of your life. In fact, right now, you can just sit back in front of that TV for the next 10 years and watch all the soap operas, gain 300 pounds. And anytime somebody tells you why you're like that, you can tell them your sorry story, and they'll be sorry for you. You got a great excuse. But you can get up and make that man feel sorry he ever left you. You can become a heck of a woman that your children are going to be proud of. You can become that if you want to, but I can't do that for you. Nobody can do that for you. And that why kicked in. I want my children to feel proud of me. I want to be able to show my kids that anything can be accomplished. And all of a sudden, and I said, there's been 3,000 women who've gone through the same thing that you have. Half of them, or more than half, never made it. And they all have this sorry story that they can tell everybody. And once they tell their story, everybody says, oh, I feel so sorry for you, honey. Or you got the women who got up and made a difference for themselves. You decide which one you want to be. Nobody can do that for you. People, whatever problem you're going through in your life right now, whether it's finances, or you got problems in your marriage, where you have problems in diseases, maybe you got a sickness, maybe you have whatever you have, I can guarantee you that in this whole world, a bunch of people have had the same exact problem. Some have made it and some haven't. Which one are you going to be? And that's a decision that you make. Nobody can make that decision for you. Elijah, he sat there and he complained to God, and God said, Elijah, get out of this cave. I got work for you. And if we go back to those to the scriptures, we see that what God does, he takes them at the end there, and he says, then the Lord said to him, go return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, anoint Hazael as the king of Assyria, He says, I got more work for you. Also, you shall anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, as king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Japhet of Abel, Meholah, you shall anoint as a prophet in your place. In other words, he says, listen, get up and move on. Move on. There's work to be done. You're stuck on yourself. And most discouragement comes when people get stuck on themselves. They have no why. And they get all stuck about, feel sorry for me. Look what I'm going through. Look what this. I can guarantee you, you're not the only one who's gone through that. You're not the only one. And God says, you got to get up and you have to find a why in your life. A why you want to do something. And you can't get stuck on what you feel, how I feel, on this sorry pity party that, you know what, the pity party is good for a little bit, but don't let it sink in. And what happens is that people let the little pity party sink in, and it goes in. You know what happens, people? I have found out when depression kicks in, depression feels comfortable. It does. And you don't want to hear answers. You don't want to hear that there's a way out. Okay? You don't want to hear that there is a way out. What you want to continue to hear is how depressed you are and how many reasons you have, and it begins to feel comfortable, and you sink in, and you don't want anybody telling you that there's a solution. And you begin to just sink into yourself. All discouragement and all depression, everything begins to turn inward, into yourself. Look what's happening to me. Look what I'm going through. I can't believe this. I can't get out of this. And that I kicks in, comes in one after the other. And it comes to a point that the only way you can get out of it is that you have to find something else to do, to serve somebody else, to make a difference in somebody else's life, and you got to get rid of that I. And that's what God told Elijah. He said, listen, Elijah, you over here crying, get up. I got work for you to do as a prophet. You know what, people? When I, as a pastor, begin to get discouraged because things just don't work out, and things don't get going, and I'm at home thinking, I don't know how Origin is going to keep going. I don't know how I get this. I don't know how this is going to get going. All of a sudden, people, the thing that gets me going, when somebody calls me and says, Pastor, there's somebody sick at the hospital, you need to go see him. I get up and I go see that person, and I start praying for that person, and I start going. And somebody said, Pastor, can you come over here? I'm going through this problem. Can you help me? We'll meet at the office. Let's go. And all of a sudden, it's gone. All of a sudden, the discouragement is gone. And all of a sudden, I begin to work at why I do this in the first place. Why I do this in the first place. People, discouragement, it's real. It's real. It happens every day. But let me tell you what else is real. Getting out of the discouragement is real too. Being encouraged is real too. Being encouraged is real. Being able to get out of it is real. Being able to be successful Christians is real. Being able to live what God wants you to live, that's real too. I want to finish the last two things that go into discouragement. It's something that leads people into discouragement are people who have the inability to adjust. Have you ever met those people? They can't adjust. To them, this plan has to be here and here. And they got to be like this, okay? Now, if somebody comes in and does this to it, oh, hell broke loose. Oh, my God. I can't work here. I can't work like this. Oh, my goodness. It was supposed to be like that. And then you come in here and do this. How you going to expect me to work here? They can't adjust. They're not flexible. Let me tell you, people, in this world, if you can't adjust and you're not flexible, you're going to have a hard life. You're going to have a real hard life. Because if anything can go wrong, it will what? It will go wrong. You know, and if you can't adjust to life, and if you're not flexible, you're going to have problems. You're going to be discouraged all the way through, because I guarantee you there's going to be a million things done that are going to go wrong in your life. And you need to adjust to that. You know, you're going to get married. Well, a wife should be this, and a wife should do that, and a wife should do this, and a wife. Oh, come on. Then you're going to get married. They're going to find out she ain't all that you thought it should be. But you already married. Bend, adjust, flex. Do whatever you got to do, but make it work. And at the end of the day, it might not be straight, but you'll be laughing curved, but you'll be laughing. It might not be exactly the way you thought it was going to be, but you're still going to be enjoying life. You know, it's the kind of people, I don't know if you ever go out to dinner with people, and there's type of people that they're always causing a problem. See the way that waiter looked at me? Yeah, and I'm going to tell him when he comes back. Bro, take it easy. Have a good time. You know? And you go out. See the way that dude just cut in front of me? Yeah, just put on the brakes and wait for him. But there's always a problem. They have a hard time adjusting to things. The last one is that sometimes we look for victory in only one way. How many people start a business, one thing, and it comes out another that becomes successful another way? You know, sometimes you have to be careful that happiness and victory doesn't always come exactly the way you think it does. It doesn't always come the same way. But you know why people don't see it? Because they don't have a why. That's why they don't see it. At the end of the day, if you have a business of making iPads, and you wanted an iPad that was a triangle iPad, okay? And all of a sudden, you saw that the iPad was better in a square. I said, I'm not doing it. I wanted a triangle. But if you have a why, that the reason why you do it is because you want to feed your family, you don't care if it's square, if it's triangle, if it's whatever. At the end of the day, you're feeding your family, you're paying your mortgage, and you're living a good life. So a lot of times, people, the victory and the success is not in exactly the way you wanted, but if you have a why and God is leading you and you know that God is in charge, there's many different ways. Like they say, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. And don't just get stuck on one way of skinning a cat. See, Elijah, he had it all down packed. I'm going to kill these people. I'm going to kill these prophets. I'm going to be the biggest prophet in here, and I'm going to be sitting fat. Nope. God had another way. And he ran off, and when things didn't turn out exactly the way he thought they were going to turn out, he had a problem. Depression kicked in. Discouragement kicked in. All of this kicked in, and he let him get sunk. He let himself get eaten by me. I'm the only one, God. And when God got him straight, God told him, he said, listen, Elijah, I have 700. Where you come off of, you think you're the only one. I got 700 prophets who think just like you. I got 700 people that are obedient. You're not the only one obedient to me. And God had to set him straight. Where you get off thinking you're the only one. And he had to humble himself, and he came back, and God gave Elijah the victory that he wanted to give him, not the victory that Elijah wanted. Discouragement is something that can hit all of us. It's hit me. And I'm sure that if you're a human being and you're breathing, it's hit you. It's hit you. But at the end of the day, you got to know that God has a plan for you. And your idea, your biggest idea is to find out what is that plan that God has for you. And ask God not to bless your plans, like you've heard me say before. Not ask God to bless your plans, but ask God to open your eyes so you could see what plans he has for you. And that you can carry them out. And if you're going through this discouragement right now in your life, you can get up from it. And you can look at different ways of what you got to do. And sit down and start writing down options. One of the things that I do with people who are dealing with depression, I say, right now, I want you to sit down and make a little list of what you're going to do tomorrow. What you would like to do tomorrow. Write it down. Because what happens when people, it gets so dark around them that they don't know what to do. But if you make a list of what you're going to do tomorrow, then you get up in the morning and you work on one and you work on two, and pretty soon you start getting out of that hole. When you begin to accomplish things one by one. That if you're dealing with this depression, if you're dealing with discouragement, stop looking in and start looking out. Start looking at what God has for you. Start looking at the possibilities out there. Maybe there's just one. Start knowing that you're not the only one suffering. There's many just like you. And start talking to the right people to be able to get out of it. And what I'm telling people, you can get out of it and you can become everything that God wants you to be. You're not the only one who's going through this discouragement. And your problem is valuable and your problem is real, but the power of God is also real to bring you out of it. May God bless us today.